Ambassador Галовеј, world is handling with the biggest pandemic ever. How much does the UK invest in dealing with COVID-19 and finding a vaccine?
The UK is committed to the global effort to develop, manufacture and distribute a vaccine. This is going to be the best way to tackle the virus for the long term, to help with the recovery and ensure that we have no further risk of repeated outbreaks. So we're doing a number of things. We're the largest donor to the efforts of the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, CEPI, who are trying to find a vaccine. We've pledged £388 million towards their $8 billion goal for vaccines, treatments and tests. But we're also, this is in addition to our £1.65 billion commitment to Gavi. So that's the Vaccine Alliance's vital immunisation work across the world. So on May the 4th, we co-hosted with the European Commission the Global Coronavirus Response Summit, which was raising much needed funds for tackling the pandemic worldwide. On the 4th of June, we'll host a global vaccine summit. And this is to make sure that Gavi is fully funded so that everyone can get equal distribution of vaccines when prepared.
How different are the measures implemented here and there? How do you rate them?
Well, I think although we're facing the same problems worldwide with the virus, how we tackle them need to be slightly different because each country is different. So just for example, the United Kingdom is an island with 66 million people living in relatively close proximity to each other. You could compare that with, say, Canada, which has half the population over a much larger area. And then this country, North Macedonia, which is much smaller and landlocked. But actually, a number of the measures we've introduced have been quite similar around social distancing, the closure of entertainment and leisure places, the closure of schools. One area that has been different is there's been a curfew here, whereas in the UK, the system was you were allowed to go out once a day for exercise or other essential business. But we're seeing the measures are effective here. The numbers aren't increasing exponentially. The healthcare system is coping. So I think for all of us, we're now asking the questions of how we move into the next phase, which is allowing greater social movement, greater movement of the economy, while ensuring the health and safety of all of our citizens.
What assistance has Macedonia received so far from the UK?
Well, we're facing a number of challenges during the crisis. It's a healthcare crisis, it's an economic crisis, and these are all areas we're going to be needing to work together on. So in the more immediate impact, we've donated personal protective equipment to the Ministry of Defence and the military here. We've supported the government with translation into English of key documents for the state of emergency. We this week donated food and hygiene products as part of President Penderovski's initiative to support the most vulnerable people affected by the crisis. We're also preparing work with other vulnerable communities such as the Roma and also women at risk of domestic violence. On the economic side, there's a lot to do. We're working with British businesses to ensure that they have the support they need during the crisis, as the UK is the #1 foreign direct investor in the country. It's really important that these companies can operate successfully. We're supporting the Helsinki Committee to identify labour rights violations during the crisis. We're using our Mladi Hub project to help provide digital skills for youth. And we're also supporting recovery projects, economic projects for recovery post-COVID. For example, a skills project with UNDP looking at the textile and construction industry. Obviously, during a crisis like this, it's really important that people have access to good, strong, solid information and that the media can survive the crisis. You know, local media might be hit quite hard by a decrease in advertising revenue. So we've just, as well as a number of media projects that we're working on with local and regional media, we're signing this week a project with the Institute for Communication Studies, ICASA, for €1 million to provide information to citizens about their rights during the crisis and help to hold government to account.
Last month, Macedonia became the newest NATO member state and still expect the start of negotiations with the EU. In which sectors do you see weaknesses and where the country can expect assistance?
Well, the first thing I would say is that it's a really positive story that North Macedonia joined NATO last month and that the process has started for an intergovernmental conference with the EU to open accession negotiations. This story got a little bit lost during the crisis, and that's a shame because it was a huge success and it reflected the progress that North Macedonia has already made in a number of areas. Justice reforms, starting to tackle corruption, security sector and intelligence sector reform. This is all really positive work, which we've been pleased to partner with you on. Going forward, I think the challenge is going to be to continue to implement all these reforms, to monitor the implementation, and to ensure that that reform's taken forward across a whole range of areas, from education to the environment, to really tackling corruption and strengthening the justice sector and public administration reform. I think these areas are not just important for EU accession, they're about delivering for the citizens and giving them the benefits and the rights that they deserve. And the UK will remain a committed partner and work with you in all of these areas.
Parties here in Macedonia have started a debate on holding elections. Do you expect elections to be held in the country this summer?
Well, obviously elections were due this year and they were delayed by the state of emergency. I understand from the news that President Penderovski will be meeting with the leaders of all the parties next week to try to find a way forward on an election date. And I think that's a good democratic way forward for the country, but it, just like everything else that's happening, needs to be done in a way that's safe and secure for the health of citizens who have the right to vote in safe and healthy circumstances, people overseeing the elections, people observing the election.
Ambassador Галовеј, thank you for this interview.
Thank you very much.